as a preparation for today, I ask you to consider some questions. So let's bring our hearts in prayer as we consider some questions of cost and value. Loving God, may the meditations of all of our hearts spring from your word, and may your word fill us and keep us today and always. In your name we pray. So these questions that I ask you to consider for today came from a webinar that I took part in while on sabbatical. The leader introduced these questions as foundational questions that each of us who are part of a Christian faith community need to answer. He said, before we can talk about where our church is going, and he was talking about the church universal, we each need to be able to answer these questions. So here are the questions. Why Jesus? Why am I a Christian? And what difference does Jesus make in my life? He went on to say that most of us, however, can't really answer these questions easily. That we don't consider or articulate the answers to these questions. So if someone asked us, why are you a Christian? We wouldn't really have a ready answer most of the times. Actually, when I've heard that question, there is an implied, why are you still a Christian? Particularly after some egregious or felonious act by a Christian leader or some overt hypocrisy among groups of Christians. In the introduction to his latest book, Do I Stay Christian?, author and pastor Brian McLaren recounts a number of conversations that he has had over the last 20 years or more with Christians of all sorts, evangelicals, Catholics, mainline Protestants, who are struggling with answering these kinds of questions. Out of those conversations, he began to understand that being a Christian means different things to different people. So maybe, I think, we first need to answer the question, how am I a Christian? McLaren talks about 11 facets of Christianity. Christianity can be understood historically or culturally as a legacy you are born into or enter by choice. You inhabit, as a Christian, a cultural or historical tradition. Christianity can be defined institutionally as a power structure or hierarchy in which you participate. You affiliate with an institution and accept its authority structure. Or Christianity can be defined doctrinally as something you believe. You affirm a system of beliefs or teachings. Now, McLaren has 8 more ways that Christianity can be defined, but what can you think of that hasn't been revealed yet? I want you to predict what other things he's going to say Christianity might be. How we are Christians. What other ways can we be Christians? You can shout them out, call things out, or type them out in the chat.
It's going to say what you do.
So in the doing, through acts of service, through forgiving, through care, Breeze says.
Christianity, like many other great world religions, shows us how to be. How to be, not just how to act, how to be with each other, with God, and within ourselves. And Jesus shows us the way.
I think you're catching some of his. Let's go on and see what else he has to say. Christianity can be defined liturgically or pragmatically as a set of rituals you practice. You engage in some version of Christianity's rituals or practices. He says Christianity can be defined spiritually or experientially as something you feel or as a conversion experience you've had. You have, foster, and share a set of experiences. Christianity can be defined moralistically as a shared set of moral values or precepts in your doing. You live your life by a moral or ethical framework. Christianity can be defined missionally, maybe more of your doing, as a program, plan, or movement for intentional action in the world. You take on that mission as your own when you choose to be a Christian in this facet. Christianity can be defined demographically as a sociological or anthropological identity. I am a Christian in that group. You identify yourself as a member of a recognized group. Christianity can be defined politically as a way of organizing people for political action or inaction. You act as part of a coalition with shared theopolitical aims. Christianity can also be defined socially as a community of people in whose presence you feel safe, welcome, needed, accepted, or supported. You enjoy an experience of social belonging with others who identify as Christians. And Christianity can finally, in his list, be defined linguistically as a shared set of words and ways of communicating. So, McLaren goes on to say that he realized by the time he was out of college, he had identified himself as a Christian in all of these ways, through family heritage or demographics, going to school to learn to the doctrines, rituals, and moral values being taught to respect institutional leaders, having a conversion experience, being part of a mission and a social group, taking a stand about not speaking out on politics, which he later realized was a political stance, and sharing common language and history with other Christians. So, I've got the list up here. How many of these facets apply to you? Most of them. Are there any that don't apply?
Some in more degrees than others.
Some more than others. Okay.
It's a pretty overlapping list.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's demographics versus historical. It's a little ethnically, if you're Irish, you're Catholic, something like that, even though I'm Irish and I'm not Catholic. For example, are you socially a Christian? Because you've been or want to be a part of a community in whose presence you feel safe, welcome, needed, accepted, and supported. I suspect that's why you're here. Are you historically or culturally or demographically a Christian? Because you were born into a Christian family. Not all of us were raised in Christian homes or went to church as a child. However, that might not be a fit for some. We may not have those ties. Some of us did not participate in Christianity with a lot of formal liturgy, ritual, or clearly articulated doctrines and creeds. For example, Baptists versus Catholics. So some more than less than others. Some of us may be able to describe our spiritual conversion experience, and others not. For each of us, though, how we are a Christian probably makes a difference to the way we'll answer, why are we a Christian? McLaren Warren then goes on to share a bit about his subsequent disillusionment with each of the facets of being a Christian as he discovered the whitewashed history that he'd been taught, hypocrisy, lack of welcome and belonging, greed, corruption, political activities that didn't reflect loving your neighbor, etc., etc. If or when you realize that this group that you've identified so closely with is flawed, insincere, or just plain lying, how do you cope? We confront all of that if and when we are able to answer these basic questions for ourselves. Why Jesus? Why am I a Christian? What difference does Jesus make in my life? We might rephrase these questions based on what our scriptures from Luke 14:25-33 about counting the cost and not holding on to the relationships and material things of this world, or from Philippians 3:7-12 about our gains and losses. Is there a cost to you to being a Christian? Would that be different in other parts of the world? Would that cost be different? Are you always willing to pay or suffer those costs? What do you gain by being a Christian? What value does Jesus have in your life? So here in the sanctuary, I'd like you to break off into groups of 2 or 3 and take 2 or 3 minutes each and reflect on and maybe answer back one or more of these questions. And on Zoom, I'm going to set up some breakout rooms and let you go. And so gather into a conversation group and answer some of these questions together. This is the reflection part that you're doing. I want you to answer at least one, or maybe more of these questions. And when we come back, I'll invite you to share your reflections and answers.